So today we're talking about student engagement, or building student engagement. I know for a while, like when I was first starting at my school, this was an issue I struggled with, primarily because there was a lot of leftover sentiments from the old teacher. I've now been in my position for, I think this is my eighth or ninth year there. Before that, there were 4 teachers with a different teacher every year, and different classes and things like that. But I think once I settled in, it improved it a bit, but still I had a lot of students who were compliant with work, but they weren't engaged with it. And I say those as 2 different things, because let me figure out how to, there we go, that's what I want. I say that as 2 different things because I think we have a lot of students that are compliant but not engaged, meaning that, and I'm going to talk more about this in a bit, meaning that they're just doing the minimal effort to get their grade, not get in trouble by the adults in their life, and just kind of coast through. But I tried a couple of things this year and last year that changed how my students engaged with my work. So I guess before we get going, wow, that was really bright. A couple of questions to you guys. How do you engage with your students, or how do your students engage with their work?
I was going to let Jim go first, but
I was waiting for your good answer.
well, fine, I can go. Well, there's a number of ways that we engage our students. A lot of the engagement is because we do a lot of building-wide activities. In fact, just as an example, on Tuesday, we had what we call sophomore visitation, where all the sending schools send their sophomores. So they can see the different programs. They get to go through like 3 different programs. And I have a lot of my current students there, they're doing the presentations. So I have to get them engaged and understanding of, different components. And we set up, different stations. So I got a kid that's working on the CAD programs, or talking to him about the CAD stuff. I got another one talking to him about the 3D printers, another one talking to him about, the laser etcher. Another one talking about our competitions, a couple of our competitions, and some of the projects we do. So I know that, and I start off the year basically telling them, it's like, we're going to be doing these things throughout the year, and there's these events that go on where we're going to have people coming in. I need to make sure you guys are understanding this, and you got to be involved, and you got to get engaged so that you can come back and help present this stuff. We've got 2nd graders coming in just before Christmas to build bird feeders for a Christmas gift. So it's another event where we have the whole building involved, and the kids are getting, participating in it and helping present stuff. So
very cool. Jim, what about you?
So I'm a 2-year program, and we set a standard of leadership from our 2nd years that kind of develops our culture and the expectations for the program. The peer-to-peer learning works out really well, but when it comes to interactions with me, it's operate under a firm, fair, and friendly concept that this is just real consistent. The students always get the same thing all the time when they come up. But already with the 1st year, which is what I primarily teach, they're transitioning into a leadership role where they're explaining to me why things pass and fail based on AWS criteria and standards, instead of me going up and just always giving them the answer. And that's what builds into that 2nd year piece, so that when we get started at the beginning of the year, the 2nd year students come in and mentor the 1st year students for about 2 days when we first get in the lab. And that sets the tone and the attitude and how things operate throughout the course of the year.
Okay, nice. Both of you hit on some of the key points that I'm going to talk about later. where I think teachers, I don't want to say fail, but don't put enough effort in, and I think can really change how they run their classroom, whether it's a wood shop, whether it's a history teacher, doesn't matter. I think one, having high expectations for students, but also helping them get like get up to those expectations is a really important thing. And that also builds to the second thing that you both hit on, is having a culture in your classroom. Both, it sounds like both of you have built a culture of you you are getting the students engaged, but then also not just with the materials, but also with each other and with you guys. And you've also taken it outside of your classroom, working with students in other aspects, like Mike was saying, getting the whole building involved. I forget, are you both from career centers?
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Okay. See, now that's the big difference for me, because I'm at a local high school. I probably get a wider number of kids, but you guys, your students do, I'm assuming if it was like when I was at a career center, they have to apply to be there, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that helps quite a bit, in that they're already interested in something that they want to take with you. They have to go through an application process. So getting those students who are already have that incentive is a very big thing.
But David, do you guys have like a career day or anything at your high school?
We do, like you said, you were bringing in 10th graders. We bring
Yeah.
in the incoming 8th graders.
Yep.
And it's basically the same, sounds like it's the same thing that you do. We try not to use the term advertising, but we're essentially recruiting for our programs.
Well, because one of the things I did when I was at a high school at Kennewa Hills is I started up the career day event, where I had local businesses, colleges, military reps, all those came in, and we set up in the gym with, stations. We had our middle school come in. We had, classes from the high school that went around. It was a program that my program ran, my CAD and drafting program ran, and engaged and set up and everything. But we had the whole, middle school, high school involved with it. We were almost to the point before I left where we were going to start talking about maybe having other local schools bus in some kids if they wanted to, because a lot of the businesses in the area, we're looking. I mean, you probably have the same thing. Everybody's looking for workers right now. So, I mean, for them to take a half a day to come in, set up at school and talk to a bunch of, high school kids and see where they're at and start getting them engaged and involved and looking for something, that's a huge one, and
Yep.
getting your class involved.
And I think giving students that ownership and leadership is a really big thing too, because I don't think that happens a lot. And I think that's one way that our CTE classes, industrial arts classes, set ourselves apart from other core classes. All right, so we kind of talked about a little bit of this already, but one thing I like to make the distinction between is engagement versus compliance. And to me, I had a student who just who literally went from failing his freshman year to essentially graduating, earning credits and graduating early because he was going into the armed forces. This was a student who his freshman year, he did not give two rips about school at all. They literally put him in my class as a holding pattern. But I mean, one day I simply just pulled him aside after a month of him just blowing off work, taking naps in class, getting in trouble for it, and he still didn't care. So I was like, okay, what do we have to do to get you doing something? And he flat out told me he just wanted to wrench. So what we did is we found an old I think it was a Delta planer, and we got it donated, and he and two other students who were in the same situation, basically they started taking the whole thing apart. We didn't have any manuals, didn't have anything for it. And I said, okay, take this whole thing apart. I want you guys to recondition it over the next, over this year. They didn't get that far because then COVID hit and all that fun happened. But they came back as seniors, all three of them this year. And, you know, they were figuring they'd finish the project, or I'm sorry, last year. They got partway through, but they also learned the CAD stuff that they'd blown off for 2 years. They learned electrical wiring. They even got to the point where they were finding some parts that we couldn't find because this machine was from the 50s. So we had to go send parts out to be remade. But the thing is, I changed how I taught my stuff into a method that engaged them. They went from the compliance, which I mean by simply doing the minimal stuff, and they weren't even compliant for a good portion, to actively finding something that engaged them, and then they were able to run with it. And I think that flexibility can move a student, because we all have those students who are just doing the bare minimum to get their D or C and move along. I think building flexibility into our programs is a real connection point, because I mean, in 90% of their other classes, they don't have that. They literally have worksheets that they have to go through. They have lectures they have to listen to. They have quizzes that they have to do that really they don't care about. They don't see the relevancy to it. And I think in our areas where we do have flexibility, we should try to do that. Excuse me. So why do we want to build student engagement? One, this is increasing student learning from, whether it's a high-end AP student and they're taking their book learning and actually applying it and realizing how it applies to the real world, to a regular student or special ed student or any other student. You know, we're giving them a different environment, that they have different opportunities to engage in the world with, and engage with their learning with. So what we're also doing by when we engage students in different ways, we're also building confidence for them, whether it's getting the student who's struggling with reading to read short passages and then take that knowledge and applying it to somebody or to something, or giving a student that may be struggling in math and saying, okay, this is here how you apply basic algebra to a real world problem. Building their confidence is a huge thing, and it also helps to build that retention of information. And then students also get the ability to explore different areas of interest to them. So before I dive into some of these key factors, what have you guys found that said, like, different things that you found to engage your students?
One of the things that I've got going on right now, and I got evaluated on it the other day, my administrator was pretty impressed, is I'll pick a group of 3 students, and I do 3 on purpose, because typically we all know if there's 2, they tend to work pretty good together. If there's 3, there's one going to stand around. And I have a full rubric made up that allows them to grade themselves, but the rest of the class grades them also. And I'll give them an assignment. So for example, I asked them about power supplies. I wanted to know, for under the shielded metal arc welding, the different polarities and how they affect the weld, and give the students an opportunity to teach that. They create a PowerPoint. A lot of times they'll find a video that they link to. They have to get up in front of the class, and they run the class for a period of about 10 minutes once a week. And then we pick 3 new volunteers, and I assign something else that coincides with what our curriculum is. the expectation of the rest of the class is that they all have to come up with a question, and whether or not they got their answer to the stuff. And then they go through and evaluate who was the leader, who did they feel like they got the information that was expected out of it, and they turn all this in. Now they don't realize that I still have the final, well, they kind of know that I have the final say on the grade, but they think that they're holding a bigger piece to that puzzle on that. And what it's doing is it's getting students into an uncomfortable situation, because not everybody's born get in front of a group to speak, but it forces them to not only learn the material, but be prepared for a Q&A at the end when they presented. And so they better be prepared, because we all know teenagers, if somebody's blowing smoke, they will smell blood in the water in a big hurry and really latch onto that. And it's no different amongst themselves. And I've had a lot of fun with it. It started out originally because I had some students that were messing around and decided they had too much time on their hands. So I was like, hey, this is what we're going to do. You guys got 1 week to provide this. And it's worked out pretty well. It's morphed into what it is now. And it's something I've been doing for a couple of years, 3 years now. I kind of like it.
So repeat the question for me.
What kinds of things do you
just-
do in your classroom to that you found that engages your students?
Well, and I'm constantly, building on it, trying to change things around and get that to work, because I've tried doing, like reviews when you go through vocabulary and stuff. I've tried doing it where I, ask questions, and you're not getting everybody's involvement. So this year I started something a little different, where I'm giving them vocabulary information and lesson stuff for every day. But then every 2 weeks, because in some of my classes I'm doubled up. My afternoon classes got both my second year engineering students and my first year CAD students. So I alternate my weeks, where 1 week I'm reviewing with the CAD students, the following week I'm reviewing with the engineering students. But I got these little whiteboards now with marker things at each one of their stations. So when we do a review, I'm expecting everybody to give me an answer. And usually it's, is it a CAD term, or is it, some drafting term that we've been going over, or even math questions once in a while. But then I know I have everybody answering, whether they do it right or wrong. At least I can see an answer from them because they're writing it on a board. And that kind of alleviates those kids that don't like to speak up in front of a class. So that's one of the things I'm doing a little bit different this year.
Nice. I mean, it sounds like both of you have hit on like these first two factors for student engagement, and that's student confidence and teacher involvement. You're both building the confidence in the students, not just in themselves, but also in the subject material that they're going, because there's nothing like those first, I'd say about 2 weeks of a class when you get a new group and you ask a question to the class and you hear nothing but crickets. Because I mean, kids know that somebody's going to point a finger and laugh and all of that. I mean, you see the same thing with adults as well. You can ask a question to an audience and you get crickets. That's because they don't know who you are. They don't know what you're talking about necessarily. But as you're doing that more and more, the students are building confidence with each other, with you, with the overall environment. So they're more willing to put an answer out there, especially if there's a high potential of it being wrong. And then one area like that I have changed since I've come back from the COVID online teaching that I found was teacher involvement. For my first several years of teaching, I was that teacher that, because I didn't have a shop back then, I was that teacher that was at my desk 90% of class time. But now I try to be at my desk as little as possible, to the point where my old metal desk from probably the 1960s finally fell apart. And I got one of those I can't remember which brand, but it's a Home Depot rolling workbench. That is now my desk with all of my stuff there. I can actually roll it into the shop, and have it off on the side so that even while my kids are working in there and I need to update a grade or put a project in or something, I can do that. But I try to spend, I mean, my goal in a given day is to walk 15,000 steps, whether that's around the classroom, around the shop. I'd rather be at my desk or at the students' desks, helping them, asking them questions when they ask me a question, because I really don't like to just give them an answer. And I think that's a pitfall that any teacher tends to fall into, because that's the quick, easy solution. But getting a student to get to their own answer is another big thing. Mike, were you going to say something?
No, I wasn't gonna say anything, but I mean, that's one of the troubles I have, is because I tell kids, you know, if you need me, ask me questions, because I'm between the shop and the classroom. And so there's times when I'm out in the shop working with 2 or 3 students and the kids sitting in the classroom. I've got to make more of an effort to walk back and forth between the 2 areas to confirm, you know, do you need any help? Because again, it's those students will sit in the classroom, have questions, and start having conversations with each other and not about what they're trying to figure out, waiting for me to come back in the classroom. So that's the downside for me, and I got to work on that a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I think that's a big thing, because I run into that as well, where you get involved with a student in the shop or in the classroom and you realize, oh, it's been 10-12 minutes since I popped into the other area. And I think just given what we teach, especially, we are more likely to be in that shop space when you have students in both, for a variety of reasons. And sometimes it's just hard, but I think also getting the students to really understand that you have to ask questions to get your answers. And I'm lucky in that all my classes are split between first years and second years. So a lot of my students will actually ask, like, first years primarily have the questions. So they'll ask the second years who've already been through all of it. And my second years they're really good about stepping up and answering those questions.
One of the things that I did that's different than what you guys are doing is my classroom is attached to my lab, but I don't have real good visibility as to what's going on in there. And with the equipment that we have, I find myself with a have to be on the lab floor at all times. So any student that's working on a laptop is expected to, we fabricated up some nice fab tables, and you guys saw one of them at State Mice last year. So they bring their laptops, they put their safety glasses on, they're not allowed to sit at a stool. I got one student with an exception. He's had multiple surgeries on his foot, so I give him a little bit of a break. But all the rest of his class is standing up. If you're working on homework because you didn't take the time to get it done when you were supposed to, you do it at that fab table, and then they're in the same room with me. So it's easier to engage them at all times and keep an eye, monitor what they're doing. Now, if they missed a test, then they go with my CTE specialist into the classroom and he administers a test. But at that point, that's going to be a non-engagement between me and them anyways. We're evaluating what they know. Otherwise, if my policy is, if I'm in the lab, you're in the lab. If you're too sick to be in the lab, you can go to the office, get a hold of your mom, and go home.
You know what, Jim? That's actually a really good point. So this year, my school, like, we're in the process of going 1-to-1 with Chromebooks. And I actually moved one of my shop tables. Like, we had 2 old ones. So I put lockers under them. Excuse me. And so now I have one big, like, conference workbench kind of thing. And it's towards the corner, but it's like, that's where if students need to work on a computer, they can do it all on their Chromebooks. They have their safety glasses on and all that. We do have some stools around there, but the stools stay there. That's kind of my big thing. And I'm fine if students are working there. That's great, but it also it gives the workshop students, because I've really, our school has been pushing writing. So we do a lot of technical writing and documentation of their projects now. So that's where students can bring their Chromebooks in, do their work right over there, because we'll have students like going back and forth between their Chromebook and machines more and more. Okay, we're gonna move on to two other areas. One big thing, and I think we've touched on this a couple of times as well, is the perceived relevance of the material. I know one question that I always struggled with from students is, why do I need to learn this? Well, I think one, in the CTE and industrial arts areas, we're the application of their math, their science, their ELA, not so much the social studies, I think, but we answer that question of why do I need to know this? And I think, as Jim said earlier, students can smell stuff. They don't want to have their time wasted. I think if they realize the importance of stuff, they're going to put the work in, no matter what that importance is. The other thing is choice of activity. If you say, I have like XYZ goals to meet, I don't care how you meet them, show me that you can do it. That gives them their choice. It gives them agency in it. And one, it draws them in, and two, it's just they're more actively engaged because they're designing their project around a topic that they already have interest in. So I do a lot of less like, here, build this kind of things, and more, here is the general situation. Here's the kinds of things you need to include. And then I let them have free reign within those parameters. So thoughts from you guys on that?
I think I do a lot of that where we do a lot of flexibility and outside projects. And my biggest ones, I'm trying to push that if I can get actual client work for them, I call it. It's definitely more engaging and understanding, because then I can throw in, like right now, I went to a craft show 3 weeks ago at a local school, and showed some of our 3D printed stuff and our laser etch stuff. It was, Christmas related and stuff. And all of a sudden, all these people are like, well, your school can do these? I'm like, yeah, I can give students these projects. So I got like 2 pages of orders of stuff that people wanted specialty made. So then I take it back to the classroom, we divide it up. It's like, all right, you're working on these few projects. You're gonna have to design something. You're gonna have to figure out how to, get it made. You're gonna have to do the invoice for it. If we need to contact the client, you better have your questions. And your deadline is, we have to have it done before Christmas break. So that's my, my flexibility and engagement with them, to give them something. The hard part is that when the administration comes down and says, all right, how is this all meeting, state requirements? Then I have to start reading into the fine print and figuring out, okay, by having them do this, they're meeting this criteria, this criteria, this criteria. But that makes it a little harder on me, I know sometimes, but that's fine. I'm willing to do it because I know the kids are going to get more out of it than just doing a drafting project and making something.
But you know what? You just said something that I think is critical, and I think sets teachers apart from each other in certain ways, is it's harder on you, but that's fine. I mean, I'm not for teachers working harder, but I think the fact that you're willing to take like the paperwork hit to make a better environment for the kids, I think that's an important point there, where, I mean, I don't know how to say this without throwing certain people under the bus, is, I think some teachers simply are in it to do their 8 to 3, have their summers off. And I think that's a big problem, and that mindset needs to change, because I think students understand that quite a bit.
Well, and yeah, it's like Jim said, they'll pick up on that stuff. They know if you're a truly legitimate teacher that, wants to help them learn and succeed, as compared to those teachers that are just counting down the days. I said that when I first started taking up teaching, because I come from a work environment. I had the work ethic I had growing up and stuff was different. And I try to convey that to my kids and my students. It's like, if you want to succeed in life, it's not necessarily you're going to be rich or famous, but you're going to be successful and be able to keep busy all the time, but you've got to work for it. And,
Mhm.
and so, I mean, that's what I kind of try and convey to them. But yeah, when I first started teaching, I saw those teachers that's like, well, I only got 6 more years, or I only got 3 more years and I'm out of here. It's like, I didn't want to be that teacher. I didn't want to be that one that got to, okay, I've only got so much more time and I can retire. So,
But
Yeah, I
at the same time, we all look forward to the next holiday break too, because we need that break to recharge our batteries. So you got to be careful being too critical of those guys. But I agree with you 100%, Mike. I don't think that anybody that's associated with my program is in that. Now, I like your idea of getting projects for students. I would love to do that. Right now, my lab is in shambles, and I'm struggling to figure out how I'm going to even get Mike's projects going this year. As the host, that's going to be kind of a real Debbie Downer if there's no welding projects in there. Um, but we're fortunate we have a 2-year program, and then what I do, the way our program is set up, and prior to our construction project, has been that our 2nd-year students, they do all the customer relations stuff. They help take the order. We just oversee it. So then we can show that as a growth product in the bigger picture. My administration is fully focused on the Scent certifications that has absolutely nothing to apply to that. They're only worried about Perkins 5, which drives me crazy because we could give that up and still be sitting just fine at my district.
yeah, I think you both hit some really big points there. I think um I mean, I probably am a little critical of certain teachers, but I think that um I agree with you, Jim, that we do love our breaks. I mean, what we do is a very hard thing and very tiring thing. I think when you're putting a lot of effort into it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with looking forward to breaks. We do need to recharge those batteries. But when you have a certain mindset, I think the students do pick up on that. Um, and I think that's a problematic thing in our profession in general. But I'm actually in the building. I'm probably 6 months away. Like next year, I'm probably going to be able to do this. We actually are bringing all of our engraving and plaque and trophy work in-house. We just our issue has been more of a supply chain stuff, or a supply chain issue. We're looking to build out that supply chain, and I want to make sure it's all in place before I do it. But I like the creative side that you guys are showing with your programs, because I think other areas can do this as well. I mean, this like project-based stuff, what essentially would be standards-based grading, a lot of these educational trends that have variety of names, that's our bread and butter for what we've been doing for the last 20-30 years. It's just kind of becoming vogue, if you will. But we also are used to, like, when something's not working, like Jim, your lab being torn up for construction, we don't just say, well, I can't do it. We figure out some other way to do something. And that's one of the reasons I love teaching what I do, because it's organized chaos. So let's see, I'm trying to think here. So we're kind of wrapping up things. I did go a little on the fast side with this. Any final questions, comments, thoughts I can answer for you guys? Awesome. Well, if you guys want to, the last thing I'll ask you to do is send me an email with 3 practices that you might implement to help build more student engagement in your classroom. But from what you guys have said, it sounds like you have really high levels of engagement already. So kudos to you guys on that. And thank you for joining me this morning for this presentation.
Hey, you guys enjoy the rest of your break. Thanks for hosting.
My pleasure. You guys take care.
you too, Jim. So David, do you still want 3 practices from us, or is that we pretty much discussed them. You're good with what we do.
You guys already, you told me that during everything, so I'm good with where you're at now.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.